Welcome to Animind, an anime podcast where we nerd out about all things anime and dive deeply into the storytelling art form while dissecting the psychological aspects that it speaks to. I'm your first co-host, Danny Ari.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Pugh.
And I am your third co-host, Matthew Basil. And on this episode, we will be talking about the 2021 anime film Bella, also known as Bella, the Dragon, and the Freckled Princess. Now, I think Danny, it was new for you and me, Graham. I think you had said you had seen it, right, previously. But
yeah.
Danny and I watched it for the show. And last episode, I know, Danny, you said like you weren't really expecting much. And I know before we started recording, you said that you had so much to talk about. So why don't you kick this episode off?
All right. Yeah. So, Graham, you're right. You didn't sell it too well.
But if he said anything more, it would have. I think we're gonna have to go into spoilers.
Yeah, that's immediately gonna be my first thing. Like, if you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest you go see it. It's not the longest movie ever. It's on HBO Max. Go watch it because it's really, really good. And I'm gonna dive immediately into spoilers.
Okay, so this is a spoiler warning, and I think since we're gonna do spoiler warning, I'll just throw this out right now too. There is a trigger warning for child abuse, so if that triggers you, you might want to also steer clear of this episode and join us for episode 4.
I definitely want to talk about the trigger stuff later because I didn't expect that myself. It was definitely, too relatable, too much. I just didn't expect it, so it kind of threw me off. Because when you hear anything that's like Belle or Beauty and the Beast, it's going to be a love story, and it's going to be like everything else that's always been redone a billion times, rehashed. But I was really pleasantly surprised because I thought it was well told. When they introduce the beast or the dragon, you also get introduced to the two main male characters, and you're like, oh, which one's it gonna be? It was neither, and that's what got me, because it wasn't so much a love, like a romantic love story. It was about a love of being yourself, a love of finding yourself. It was a love story all the same, but the best part was that he had to find his own strength. And I've always enjoyed stories where, the princess doesn't need to be saved kind of stuff. Like, it's cool because it's not something you expect. It's finding that strength from within. And I thought that was super powerful. And it was just so well done. And there was a lot of points where I didn't know what was going to happen next, which doesn't happen often. For as much as I watch a crap ton of anime, a crap ton of movies, you can almost guess by the way a plot's set up what's going to happen. Not the case with this.
Yeah, especially towards the end. I kind of thought at first, it's going to kind of follow the same format as Beauty and the Beast. And then it was like, oh, no, not quite.
In case you, for some reason, don't care whether we spoil this and you haven't seen the movie yet, it's about a very reclusive, shy young girl, I guess, or teenager in Japan named Suzu, who lost her mother, which I want to talk about that because I thought that was really interesting and really well done, but we'll go.
Yeah, loss is definitely something I want to talk about too. So we can get into that.
But we'll go back to that. But basically, Suzu loses her mother and was a musician. Her mother was a singer, and she was teaching Suzu how to sing. So Suzu hasn't been able to sing since she lost her mother. And she's real shy and withdrawn and very introverted and very self-conscious. And she basically gets an invite to join this like social media platform. For those of you who have seen Ready Player One or are familiar with that movie, it's basically the same concept as Oasis was, only like this movie uses it kind of in a different way, which I really liked. The Ready Player One was more about how people connect over pop culture. This is more about finding kind of, I guess, a truer voice.
I mean, it was also about connecting, but I think one of its strong points was that it addressed cancel culture. It addressed the negative side of social media and how it can affect us in bad ways. And I thought that was so well done. Holy crap.
It was so much more encompassing than Ready Player One. And I'm a fan of Ready Player One. Ready Player One made me like break down in tears. And I am a fan of that movie. But it was Ready Player One, I think, was much more singularly focused. This did go into cancel culture. This, like we said, goes into child abuse. This goes into finding your inner strength. It takes the romance part of that was kind of in Ready Player One, and it has that there, but it takes it in a much deeper level where it's almost not even about the romance. That was one of the things I really liked about it, was that it wasn't a clear-cut romance. You weren't even sure if there was even a romantic partner there and who it was. But anyway, the Suzu girl joins this platform called You, which is like Oasis, if you're familiar with Ready Player One, and she in there can sing, and she becomes this big cultural icon within You. Nobody knows her true identity, and she ends up kind of coming in contact with this other user in You who is known as the Beast, who is very hated and has all this mystery surrounding him. And it's kind of leads into that, which I didn't expect the Beast to be introduced into this. When I knew what I knew about the movie and going in for the first maybe hour of it, I figured, oh, okay, it's about her, and she's gonna find her voice, and she's gonna sing, gain confidence, and all that. And that is in the movie. That's why I liked it better than Ready Player One overall, because it took it so much further and expanded and went so many other areas.
And also, I really enjoyed the juxtaposition between Suzu and her struggles, and this kid and his own struggles, and how they're both struggling in their own way, but they are pushing each other to be better, not even intentionally at first. It's just that the way that they connect, they can see the strength in each other, even though they can't see it themselves. And it was just so, so good, because you don't get that from the basic, oh, Beauty and the Beast thing. You're like, oh, you love me anyway. I'm a beast and I was a jerk and I did deserve to get turned into a beast. This kid. But what's great about this story is that it was never his fault. It was never his fault. And it's his strength that actually makes him this person, because he's got to be strong. And people, much like the real internet, it addresses that you only see this sliver of what people are on social media. You don't see the background. You don't see the struggles that they're dealing with behind the scenes, because you don't know anything. You just see what they want you to see, or what this little sliver allows you to glimpse into their life. And so I thought it was really cool to see something that was kind of given to the newer generation via anime, like a new thing that does address cancel culture, that does address the super, quote unquote, superheroes, that they're enforcing the law. They don't know anything either, and they are going mad with power and just all of this stuff. And they don't even know the story. We didn't grow up with cool stories like that, because, I mean, the internet wasn't a thing, but we didn't grow up with the whole idea of people don't know the real you, so you have to show your own strength. You've got to find yourself. It was always about, oh, someone's got to save me. So, like, I really enjoyed this rendition, because it's not about someone else's loving you, finding you within your darkness. It's someone showing you that you are lovable and you have been, and that you are strong and you have been, and getting you to believe in yourself. And that's the trick of it. And I thought that was so good.
Well said. Another thing that I really appreciated, that I'm not sure if you guys mentioned, Danny, you were kind of talking about how between Belle and the dragon, how they kind of are dealing with their stuff in their own way. How at first Suzu doesn't really have anyone that she really talks to apart from her one friend. And then as the movie goes on, she finds more support online and among the rest of the people she knows in real life. And then as she's trying to help the dragon, she is able to provide for him what other people provided for her, and that social support.
I related really hardcore to Suzu, because I was in choir. I was very antisocial. I had one friend growing up. I had grew up with these boys, but I never was really close with very many people. And there was just so much that I could relate to. And the whole idea of Suzu kind of getting in this world where she's able to be somebody else, because she lives in a small town where everyone knows her for this loss that she suffered, and she so traumatized from this past thing that happens to her, that when she gets into this world, she's scared and nervous at first, but people just see her and they see her talent and they're like, you're really talented, and she kind of just gets that positivity, and it gives her her own kind of strength. She starts to see that I do have this strength. People don't know me. People aren't seeing me for this trauma that I've experienced. They're seeing me just for what I am, what I can do. And it was such a powerful thing that when she's trying to reach out to the dragon, she's like, who are you? I need to know who you are, because you're not. It's kind of the opposite. Like I said, it was a juxtaposition. Everyone thinks he's this monster and this awful person, and he's just a kid who's struggling and just trying to find strength elsewhere, or like trying to show this strength, trying to get away. I just really appreciated the way that she's able to kind of provide, like you said, what this you-verse kind of provided for her in a different way. We don't really know you, but we want to. You are strong on your own. Even if it wasn't specifically stated outright, she was able to search within herself and kind of find that strength.
Since we're diving right in here, because there is a lot to talk about. Like I said, this is a 2-hour movie, and it touches on a lot of things. But some of the things that really stuck out to me, which we already mentioned, was the romance. The fact that, like you said, there's, because we're in spoiler territory here, there's this guy that you think she's going to end up with, and there's kind of romance, and you think he's the beast, and then it's this other person, and you don't even know where there's a romance between the two of them, or whether there's still a romance between her and the original guy, or whether there's no romance between anybody and they're all just friends and supporting each other, which I thought was really good. It wasn't that classical, she's got to end up with, some guy at the end.
Because I hate in movies when there's contrived romances, because you gotta get with a girl at the end, because that's just what you gotta do.
But that's not life,
no
and that's why I liked that they didn't do that. 'Cause that's how life is. It's not just you tie it all off with a bow. They lived happily ever after. No, life isn't like that.
Just because you're close with someone who's not of the same gender as you does not mean that, like, oh, you gotta get together. So that was appreciated, especially when, like, given how the original Beauty and the Beast went, I was kind of like, okay, well, now we're hitting the major story beats of Beauty and the Beast. Oh, okay. I guess we're not doing that.
I want to talk about my favorite character. Since we do this, can you guys guess who my favorite character is?
This one's a little more difficult here. I mean, I would assume, since you said you identified with her, I would go with Suzu as the logical answer. So I guess I'll go with that one. But I'm not as confident as I have been in the past when we played this game.
What?
I'm thinking the dragon.
You're both wrong.
What? Is it the
dad.
friend? Oh. The dad's really good. The dad
had the smallest part, but he was so important. He was such a focal point for me. I gravitated towards him because he is unendingly patient with this girl. He is always reaching out. He's always trying, like, she'll brush him off. She won't look at him. She's completely shut down from him. Yeah. And he just keeps trying. He doesn't give up. He's just like, okay, well, we'll try again. And he doesn't give up. He keeps doing this. And it's been years. So you can imagine he's been doing this for years, and she's just been shutting him down, which is why that last scene is so good, because she's like, I'm home, or I'm back. It could mean either she's back from this trip she went on to Tokyo, or what I took it out as I'm back. Like, I've been gone since mom's been gone. I'm back. And he's like, welcome home. And that was just so powerful, because I was like, damn, she hasn't been able to be herself and just enjoy her life. And now that she's kind of figured some things out and kind of reconnected to the person that she is inside, and without her trauma, or despite her trauma. And the same with the guy. He's like, I'm glad I don't have to look after you anymore, because now we can have fun. I've been waiting to say that for a long time. Everyone was just being so patient with her because she had this like crazy loss, this crazy trauma. I love a good supporting character. They get it. So yeah, that was my favorite character. He was such a minor character. I didn't want to forget to talk about him, but I love the dad so much. He's such a good a good dad.
Father of the year. What was your favorite, Graham?
I can't think of who my favorite was off the top of my head. I liked all the characters though. But yeah, I really like the dad. I felt for him a lot. He's dealing with the loss of his wife too, and then he's trying to be there for his daughter, and then she's just kind of brushing him off. And for most of the movie, I was like, oh, come on, like he's trying, like give him the time of day. And then at the end, when she's more open and warm to him, then I'm like, oh, there you go.
Character development, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Who was yours, Matt?
Mine was Kia, the beast or the dragon. And like you said, Suzu reminded you a lot of yourself. He definitely hit home for me. So I don't know about you two. I mean, I knew he was the dragon like instantly as soon as the first time they showed him on screen. So.
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I get where you're going.
I was kind of trying to figure out because they kept showing the boys. I'm like, where are these boys fitting in? And then I had to think about it because there was a point where she was following the beast and there was like his little ghost buddy. Yeah. She's like, which one are you? And he's all like standoffish. And I'm like, oh my God, it makes sense. Like it took me a minute, but I was like, oh my God.
It was similar to like what we talked about last episode with Wolf's Rain. It was similar that like not all the pieces kind of fit in until the very end, and when they all did, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now the whole picture kind of pulled back because even though I knew he was the beast or the dragon, whichever interpretation you want to go with, I wasn't still like, okay, well, wait, I didn't understand like why he ended up at the concert and ended up with Belle, and I was like, oh, okay, the little brother was her first fan. The fact that that's how she finds him because there's the brother is singing the song that she was singing to him in the castle. So like all those things kind of clicked in there, which I liked actually because it was really nice. Because even though I knew who the dragon was, there was still mystery that kept me compelled. So I thought that was really good. Like you said, they didn't go for the standard beats in the story. I also liked a lot that because we talked about the loss of the mother, because parent loss is a common thing in a lot of films and TV and stuff. But I like the fact that they made the parent loss kind of more complicated and therefore I thought more realistic.
Oh my God, yes.
It wasn't just like the mother died in a car accident or got hit by a car or was shot in a robbery or something like that that's real kind of cut and dry. It was the mother died trying to save a stranger, a young girl, unrelated, from a river and drowned while she saved her. So there's this resentment mixed into Suzu's grief because why did you leave me to go save the stranger, and you abandoned me? And I thought that's so realistic for grief because grief is so rarely cut and dry in this world.
Yeah, okay, so that was one of the things I wanted to talk about too because I'm all about juxtaposition and parallels and all that. That whole scene towards the end where her friend is like, why are you chasing after this kid? You're going to destroy everything we've built together. And like, I get that she's worried for her, but also she's kind of being a little selfish, but she knows her. She's like, why would you do this? This is the only place you can be yourself. Why are you going to ruin this? And then like at that moment, Suzu's getting those flashbacks of her mom going into this river, that this tragedy, this thing that she's thought about probably every day since she was a kid. That's she earlier in the film she was thinking like, why did you pick some other kid over your life with me? What made them so important? And then when she gives up everything, she puts herself in danger for someone she doesn't even know because they just need help. They need to be saved because if she's not going to do it, no one's going to do it. And she finds that strength within herself. And in that, she realizes why her mom did what she did. And she's able to finally get through this trauma and understand and make sense of it. And it was just, as they're showing side by side, like pieces of what's happening now versus what happened in the past, just bam, 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 bam. It was just so powerful. I heard it was one of the longer standing ovations in the Cannes Film Festival. It was like 680 seconds or something of a standing ovation after this played. And that's kind of a big deal.
I believe it.
No, it was so well done. And the art and the music, I haven't even gotten to those things, but what I'm saying is the juxtaposition of those storylines with the swell of the music. And there was, nothing happening like vocally. It was just all emotion with the music and the flashbacks and I felt like I was being pulled into the story, because I feel like when a storyteller can get their point across without force feeding you what's going on, just by showing you and just by feeling it, that's hard to do, and I think it's very, very underappreciated by at least a lot of people today.
At that scene towards the end where Suzu starts singing and then everyone starts joining in, like I went and saw this in the theater by myself, and this sounds a little over dramatic, and this usually doesn't happen to me, but I got goosebumps.
I had goosebumps like most of it.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I'm just going to go through the stuff there because there's so much to unpack with this film. But I also really liked, since we brought up the ending too, again, it basically, we're in spoiler territory. The Beast is an abused child. His mother died, and it's just him and his brother and his father is abusive. It's not made clear whether his father was always abusive or became abusive after the loss of his mother, because he couldn't handle his own grief. I guess that's left up to interpretation, but he's very abusive to the children. And the older brother, who's the Beast, is protective of the younger brother. And Belle or Suzu finds out about this and then goes to them, like you said, to do help. And there's a couple things I really liked about this scene. Was one, that they showed the child abuse. And by the way, I'll just take a moment, just say if you are a victim of child abuse, heaven forbid, or you know somebody who's a victim of child abuse, we do have resources on the Victims and Villains website, our parent company. You can call 1-800-4-A-CHILD, which is 1-800-422-4453. But they showed the child abuse. I felt it could be triggering. It wasn't too bad, but I could see where it could be triggering. Sometimes with abuse, this is like spousal abuse or any kind of child abuse, any kind of abuse. Sometimes they show like the violence. There's actually very little violence that's shown. The dad, the only real violence is when he's kind of trying to pull Suzu away later on. He scratches her like almost by accident anyway. But you could still tell the terror, and it still came through. And I thought that was a less lazy way of doing it, I guess, is a good way to term. Because you could just have him start wailing on these kids, and you could get that same effect. But they got that, I think, same effect, that psychological effect. Is extremely damaging besides the actual physical abuse. And they got that psychological effect across without showing the actual like physical violence. And I just thought that was really good. So much media, and I've said this before, that I see nowadays, they just kind of take the lazy route. They just pump up the volume all the way and turn the dial, to 10, and to just get the point across, rather than trying to figure out a way to do it without showing it. And I thought that was really good. And then when Suzu does arrive, which I thought was just such a powerful scene, she saves the boy. She stops the father from basically dragging the boys back to the home, most likely beating them, by just basically hugging them and just standing in between the father. And she doesn't throw a punch, doesn't shout a word, doesn't say anything. It's just her physical presence and the strength of will, and it makes him literally cower and back down and run away. And I thought that was such a powerful way to show how you can stop abuse, whether it's child abuse, any kind of abuse, by just being that physical presence there and saying, I'm going to stand against that. I thought that is such a beautiful and such a powerful and poignant way of doing that it just really blew me away.
Kind of running along that same vein, I love the way it highlighted the problems with the system. Because that scene where Kay is like, I'll save you, I'll save you, I'll save you, and whatever he says, it was just so powerful. The repetition, the volume, just everything he was explaining, like, hey, people said they're going to help me. People said they're going to do this. They've talked to my dad. They've talked to me. They've talked to the authorities. But I'm still here. No one can help me. And it shows that hopelessness.
Remember, they try calling the police when they find out where he is.
And they say, it's got to be 48 hours. And we don't even know what's going to happen in 48 hours. There's a problem now. We saw it. And it was so, not to mention brave for these kids to put themselves in that vulnerable position of someone seeing. Because I know one of the last things, somebody who's been abused, they don't want people to see that. It's almost a shameful thing, having experienced it, and being seen as weak, being seen as vulnerable. It's hard. So the strength it took just to share that with anybody was immense. Not to mention just the power of the writers of this movie, just showing that, and then also showing what's wrong with the system, that it doesn't always work. Like, hey, these kids are getting abused, or hey, I'm having a bad time, like, we need help. And sometimes it takes somebody else, it takes somebody intervening, like, see something, say something kind of thing, because I feel like if some people didn't make it their, I don't want to say make it their problem, but if people didn't intervene, what could have happened? And it seems like people have tried before and didn't work out for them. So it does kind of highlight some of the issues in society. Hey, all these things can happen on the internet, but when it comes to the actual abuse and the actual problems, nothing's getting changed. And all it took was this girl intervening. She's just a girl.
The frustration with when they call the police and they're like, oh, well, we can't do anything because it hasn't been 48 hours yet, so we can't press charges or anything. And just Kay being constantly let down and everything really highlights kind of my experience that I've had, especially in the past year since I've seen this film originally. For those of you who don't know, for the listeners, I am about to graduate and get my master's in counseling. I've been working in the mental health and human services field, and I've just seen a lot of instances of resources that people need just not going through all the way, or the system failing people somehow, or people just not being able to have their basic needs. And I'm like, come on. It's just really frustrating. So I think this really exemplified that and really spoke to how honest and real that is. It's like, oh, well, we can't do anything. Well, like Danny was saying, we don't know what's going to happen in 48 hours. Like, they could be dead by then, or we don't know.
Yeah, it really, and it's sad. But yeah, it was really realistic in that way. Another way it was really realistic, a little, I guess, less pressing. Danny, you mentioned that they did social media and stardom very, very accurately in this one. More so than I think I've seen in any film, including Ready Player One, because when Belle starts out with the stardom, a lot of it, and this is where, like I said, this movie really took it to the next level. It could have just been she goes on this U platform, she becomes a star sensation, and it's all about her coming out of her shell, which is where I thought they would have gone, which would have been fine. It would have been an enjoyable film, and it would have, but probably one you would have just kind of tossed aside as a good way to kill 2 hours. But this, when she goes on, it's not everybody does like her, and there's controversy because she's competing against another star. This literally kind of, to some degree, happened recently. An indie artist that I follow, named Debbie Dawson, who was broke out on America's Got Talent. That's the same thing. There's people you can, if you follow on her YouTube feed, you can see comments. You are a voice of an angel. Amazing. I can't believe you did this. And then there's people who are complaining you can't redo an ABBA song. ABBA's perfection. Oh, well, she lied on the show, and all these kind of things. And it's like the whole kind of competitive culture of criticism and being scrutinized and every little thing, and there's all this gossip, rumor mills, and it's because there's all these little segues where they'll go through with all these comments of all the people, users of you, about what's going on about the Beast and what's going on about Bella and why was they at the concert, and they're just starting these rumors. And her friend, which her Hero, even said at the beginning, which I thought was, as a writer trying to make it in media, I thought it was very true. She said, well, real stardom is fans liking you in spite of the haters, which is very true. And I think to follow somebody's true art in spite of people who are down on it really shows that you do truly love them. You're not just doing it because of a fad. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that they also kind of put in there so seamlessly.
Along with that, one of my favorite parts was when it, like, overnight she just became the sensation, and then she's seeing that she's like, oh god, half of the people hate me, half of the people hate me. She's freaking out because she's just this little, like, quiet girl. I barely talk to 5 people, let alone 2 billion. So she's like, half of them hate me, and she goes, okay, but half of them don't. Pay attention, and I think that was like a really important thing to look at, is despite the people that will say things like, I did cosplay, so you get those people who are like, oh, that character's been done before, that character, like, you bought your costume versus blah blah blah, but then, like, you also have those people that are like you took the time to do the lighting and do 2 hours of makeup or face paint or whatever, like, you did all this other stuff that's like, we appreciate that. And there's going to be the 2 sides. And one of the most realistic parts I think that I saw and kind of blew me away was when Peggy Sue, it was like, what's her name? She was the other pop star that was like the big U pop star before.
Yeah, I think it's Peggy Sue.
It's Peggy Sue, right? It was like some country sounding name, yeah. So she was like the topic before Belle, and then Belle becomes this thing, and you're seeing all these blurbs about, oh, Belle's great. Oh, she's not that great. Her voice is blah blah blah. She tries too hard, and then you see this other girl, Peggy Sue, who was just the hot topic, and she's like, I think she's trying too hard, like, she's just trying to be like me, blah, blah, blah. And later, you see her cheering. You see her cheering for Belle, and she goes, sing, just be you. And when she drops her glamour, essentially, and she shows what she really looks like to these 2 billion people, she's blown away, and she starts crying. This girl, Peggy Sue, she goes, she's just a normal girl. She's just like me. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, like, we don't know her real identity, but we can just assume she's some nobody too who just became popular, and she realizes, like, she's not some superstar. Like, she's just a girl. She's just like me. And it just kind of, you see that character growth throughout the course of the movie, and by the end, everyone's crying with her because she's just a girl, and she just wanted to help and be seen, and I don't know, this is really good. Such a good movie.
Yeah, the ending is that last, like, 20-30 minutes is very heartwarming. It was around that time when I got goosebumps, and then when she's running to Tokyo to find Kei and his brother and stuff, I was just so emotionally invested at that point.
Again, similar to what I was saying last episode with Wolf's Rain, it really does deliver a really emotional wallop at the end that really pulls everything together, and it was really, really impressive storytelling. Before we get onto the animation, I also have to say the music was really, really good. And I think we already kind of touched on that, but I just want to get across to our listeners that the music is really good. And not only were the songs good, which is always appreciated, especially in a musical. It's not really a musical, but I mean, music is used a lot through it. But the music to me was almost to move the plot along. It was almost to like speak something between the characters that really could not have been done by dialogue. It's what I hope the Joker sequel will be, because the music was just, it conveyed so much, and
the lyrics were all so important.
Yeah, they were so important, and just the way it communicated, like I said, it just spoke so much soul language and expressed so much that I think it would have been difficult to do otherwise. And
Not
so
to
it was
mention,
used so effectively.
Her voice is beautiful. I was listening to the songs like in the background. I was just playing it, just listening to the songs while I was cleaning earlier, and I was just like, this is really pretty. Anybody who's been in choir, anybody who's sang anything, did any vocal training, a cappella singing is one of the hardest things to do. And there's quite a few points where she's singing without any music. And I know it's all edited, blah, 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 whatever. But to have such a powerful song written that you can sing and get this emotion across just by the tone of your voice or the power of your voice or how soft it is. They used music to its full possible way. I'm like out of words because it was just so powerful, just the music alone.
And this came to me just now, so I apologize if this doesn't make a whole lot of sense or if it seems like I'm pulling at straws. But you're talking about like her voice and everything, and it made me think of how Suzu and Kei, they're kind of dynamic. She hasn't sang since her mom died, and then she gains her voice in a sense.
Literally and figuratively?
Yeah. She kind of grows in that way, while Kei is very reclusive at first. They both start as very reclusive, and then Suzu like gains her voice, and then she's really shy about it at first, and then she accepts it, and then like by the end she's singing in front of everyone, and she's not really scared anymore, and she's got all this support behind her. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of followed what you're going for there. I don't know if this is along the same train of thought, but essentially it gives Kei his voice too.
Yeah.
You know, because I was like, this train of thought's almost done. You're almost there. You're getting real close.
Yeah.
No,
came like 15 minutes or 15 seconds before I started talking.
She literally finds her voice because when she tries to sing, she literally throws up. She throws up because she can't do it. Like,
yeah.
She's so traumatized. So she literally finds her voice, and figuratively, she's able to show the world herself. She's able to be herself and sing in front of all these people and not be scared. And in doing that, that's kind of what her what's his name, the guy that she likes,
She means Shinobu or Shinobu?
Yes.
Was it her friend that she liked?
Yeah, Shinobu,
the one who's protective of her, right?
yes. So when Shinobu, he goes, the only way you're going to reach him is if you are yourself, because you're asking him to risk everything and be himself. You got to do it first. And he's like encouraging her, and she's like, I can't. And he goes, I believe in you. You can do it. And he's just this like super supporting character, but she has to show that she's found her voice in order for Kei to find his voice, and to the extent where he doesn't even want to believe her. And then they have to do all this work to find where they're at because Dad finds the camera, and they're like, we don't know where they live, and they become detectives for a minute. But she goes all the way there, and he's like, you're actually here. And I think it's powerful because the way she saves him is by not saying a word at all. Even though she found her voice, but she was, like you said, she was just that presence being there. And he goes, I think I can do this now. So he's finding his voice to speak up. And I think that's kind of a long-winded version of what you were trying to get at, right?
Yeah. That's essentially it.
A lot of the big theme was finding your voice, and I think they did a really good job with it. Like I said, it could have just been her just becoming a superstar and finding her voice and revealing herself and starting to sing in the real world, and that would have been, like I said, a decent enough movie. But they really, like I said, took it the extra mile and really made that powerful and rich in the storytelling. And not only was the storytelling rich, but the animation. This movie was written and directed by, help me with the name here, Mamoru Hosoda. Did I get that close? There you go.
Mamoru Hosoda.
There you go. Who, by the way, I mean, this is because I'm new to anime, for those of you just joining us. And so this is my first work or movie I've seen of his, and it was wonderful. I definitely now want to see more of his. I still think Hayao Miyazaki was a better choice for Howl's Moving Castle. It more fit in his wheelhouse, I think. But this guy, I definitely want to see more of his work.
And we will be.
We will.
Who Left Through Time is one of his earlier movies.
Oh, great. Okay, we'll be doing that later this season. So good. I'll look forward to that then. Because they said I'm hesitant about time travel, but now that I've seen this one, I'm going to trust him. I'll see what he can do with it. But it was his first collaboration with the animator Jin Kim. If I'm saying that name correctly, hopefully. They met at the 2019 Oscar ceremony because I think Mamoru Hosoda's one of his movies was nominated. And so they met there, and they both had great respect for each other's work. So they decided to collaborate, and it became Bella was their collaboration. But the things that really struck out to me with the animation, first off, it went back a little bit to Osamu Tezuka, who started anime. He was the founder of anime with Astro Boy, when we talked about that in episode 1 of season 1, where a lot of techniques that now become staples of anime were done to save money originally. And that was always kind of keeping the background static and then just having the characters in front. And they did some of these, but they used it in such a beautiful way. Like when they're by the river and the characters are almost stationary in front of the river, and the river's just moving and flowing in the background, and it just looks like this moving painting, and it's so beautiful. And they did it at the school too, at least at the beginning. The school background almost looks like a photograph. It almost looked like real life, and the characters in front of it looked more like your standard anime animation. But
same with the sky too, with the sun in the clouds.
A lot of Hosoda's movies, the backgrounds and environments are just beautiful. A lot of them are set in kind of more rural settings generally. Like Wolf Children takes place like out in the countryside, and then like this is because she's from a small kind of mountain town, I guess. And then in his movie that came out before this back in 2018, Mirai, there's a lot of nature and stuff in it. You can really see how good things look. I remember during his past movies before, when I was watching them just by myself at home, like I paused a few times. I think at one point I had a screensaver of a background shot from either Wolf Children or The Girl Who Left Through Time as my wallpaper background for a little bit, because they look that good.
It gave so much depth too because of the contrast, because the characters were like, again, more your standard anime, and then the backgrounds were almost photographic. It added so much depth and contrast. I just thought that was so beautiful.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
also, I really wanted to appreciate the different styles of art and animation that were in here because it's all about having this unique avatar. It's unique to you, and if you look at the characters when they're kind of going through the crowd of all these avatars, there's random, reminds me of Invader Zim type characters. There's big eyes like Disney, that like Belle's main character, like her eyes are all big and Disney-like. Some of the other characters looked like old Disney animation. There was different types of, I don't know if it was like nods to other animators or what, but it looked like each of the characters could be from a different show or a different animator. And I thought that was really cool because when you think of like, God, I want to say like IMVU or like, you know, those Avatar social medias that been in the past, like they all look the same. They all look like, you know, copy and pasted, but the originality of each avatar I thought was really cool because it kind of brought out pieces of each of these actual people because it's based off of their like unique characteristics, like Belle's freckles, for example. And that lady, she was supposed to be like super nice, but she was kind of a devil lady. She was this tiny little baby because she was such a crybaby, and she was just, it took that from her. And then with the beast, with the dragon, he was super strong because he had to be strong for his little brother in real life. So it took that from him. And then the little ghost, he's nearly transparent because he's just so scared, and he makes himself small, and he's this little tiny ghost. And I'm like, wow, it did a really good job with each characteristic included in that animation. And then on a more broad spectrum, just anything in any anime of like glowing or any type of light type of effects, I've always really appreciated. And like if you go back to the Fireflies movie and the way they used light and all of that, like I will always love that whole idea. But the way that they used light in this, like the glowing orbs and like her heart, and then if you've ever been to a concert and everybody's got their little like lighters out or their phone camera and a sea of light orbs, it's just beautiful and it's overwhelming. And they kind of really captured that overwhelming support that I feel like comes across in that kind of a moment. And they animated it, and I just thought that was, holy crap, that was really well done.
Some of the things too, like Suzu's supposed to be kind of the whole thing, Beauty and the Beast, I guess. The whole thing is Suzu's supposed to be not very pretty. When she's making her profile and the avatar comes up and it's very beautiful that she's going to be in use, she's like, oh, did they get the other, the popular girl? Because she doesn't. And I like the fact that they didn't kind of purposely, again, I don't think anime does this as much, but Western movies do all the time. They, give glasses or anything like that. Like Sue just looked very natural. She didn't look like, a supermodel, but she just looked like a natural person, which I thought was kind of very, very well done in that animation to get that across, or rather than, again, being cliched. And I also, speaking of cliches and the popular girl, I like the fact that they didn't go the cliched route with the popular girl either, because the popular pretty girl, it actually turns out to be really nice and is friendly with her and ends up being like liking this other guy who's kind of dweeby and dorky, and they share this moment. And
oh my God, I wanted to talk about that scene too, so bad. Oh my God.
I was just smiling from ear to ear that scene because it was very wholesome.
That whole scene was so cute because I really did appreciate the fact that they didn't go with the whole, oh, maybe Ruka, the popular girl, started the rumor. And in your mind, you're like, yeah, that would track with a lot of cliche type of, movies. But if anything, I didn't find any real big cliches. Like I said, I wasn't expecting a lot of the things that happened to happen. But anyway, the fact that you realize, oh, she likes the brother. Like, they have the same last name, so of course she was confused. Like, oh, God, this was a big misunderstanding. And she doesn't like the mysterious, quiet brother. She likes the dweeby brother that everyone's overwhelmingly avoiding. They're just like, yeah, he's weird. he's really weird. Oh, he's all alone on the kayaking club, and he's just making a fool of himself, and she's just smitten, and it's so cute because you wouldn't expect that, and I loved it, and it was so well done because the way they were both acting so nervous around each other. When she's the popular girl, she talks to everyone all the time, but she's nervous and doesn't know what to say when it comes to the weird kid. It was so cute, and I was so happy that they did that because it's breaking those cliches left and right.
Yeah, it was a really heartwarming scene, and it like I said, this movie just does break so many cliches, and it could have just been, like I said, a cliched movie, and it could have been a decent cliched movie, but it broke those cliches, and it did so good. Yeah, that scene was just like, oh my god, that's like that was one of those things that definitely caught me out of the blue, because I just figured they were going to go the normal way, and I was like, oh, they're not. Oh, this is really sweet. Oh, I feel so good watching this.
Yeah, Mamoru Hosoda's movies have a lot of cute little wholesome moments like that.
Definitely want to check out his movies. And the one other thing with the animation too was that I thought not only was the animation, like we said, beautiful and realistic, but it also it carried through the story so well, I thought. And because you're dealing with the U, which kind of has a whole different template than obviously the mountain town where they're growing up and everything like that. But all of it tracks so well with the story, especially the flashback montage with the mother is, I believe, completely silent pretty much, except for, I guess, the one scene where like the Susan.
Well, I mean, there was music, but silence.
Music, yeah.
Yeah. That's
no
why
dialogue.
It made it so powerful because you didn't need an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
because the images and the music were so like got everything across. And again, I just think that's because we could try to put in cliched phrases and little moments, and again, I think that's somewhat lazy writing that people do these days, where you just try and crank the emotional meter up and just put in all the kind of hit the notes that everybody has for those warm fuzzies that they get from a childhood memories of their parents, if we are lucky to have them. But this one just showed the storyline and just set this up so well, so you felt Suzu's pain and you understood where Suzu was coming from. And I don't think there's really much. I think there's this awkward kind of exchange she has with her dad, but I don't think there's anything too much about her mother before this. And there's after this, like I said, no dialogue, just music and images. You get everything you need to know about her background, her family life, and what's kind of where she's coming from, which I thought was very commendable, again, to the storytelling of this movie.
Probably gonna cut this out, but my cat just took a mass. It just smells really bad in my room right now. That's why I'm making faces in the camera, because I'm.
Do you need to change the litter box before we continue? We can take a pause.
Fun. I'll tough it out.
That's staying in.
But yeah, no, everything about this movie was well done, and it's rare that I'm like, this is going to be one of my top 5 favorite movies, because we did Promare, and Promare's another one of those kind of intense, musically,
but so different.
Right, it's so different, and that's, I think,
over the top.
Right, but I just really appreciate when someone's able to tell a good story without spelling it out. Or I don't like the writer to assume I'm an idiot. Like, if they spell it out to you, I feel like you're taking a little too much liberty. I appreciate the movies that you've got to watch a few times. I appreciate the movies that you find something new every time you watch it, and you've seen it like 20 times. You realize things later on, and no matter how many times you watch it, you still appreciate it because it's got great music, great art, just a storyline that you want to show your friends, because you're like, you might think you know what's going to happen, but you don't. I can't wait to show my friends this weekend, because I'm like, I got my projector going. We're going to watch it on a huge screen. It's going to be great.
There you go. You can join Danny if you haven't seen this movie. She's going to be having a screening of it.
Oh, yeah. So good.
No, seriously, though, yeah, we highly recommend this movie. I had seen I forget, like a trailer or something for it. I think when it came out, Graham, I know you went to go see it in theaters, recommended it for this season.
Yeah.
I saw it and it looked like it was decent, but again, I figured, okay, it's like Ready Player One, but kind of like a singer twist on it.
Yeah, see, I'm not a big fan of musicals. I'm not. It's funny because like I grew up singing in choir and stuff like that, but I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the time it's hokey. But the way that music was used for this movie was really well done. I did see a couple previews for it, but from what I saw, it didn't look like anything out of the norm, anything different. So I was like, it's just another animated movie, whatever. I don't watch a ton of those, to be honest. So I didn't give it a second thought. And I probably wouldn't have if we didn't do this show, because honestly, I don't like cliche. I don't like redos. The second you told me it was a play on Belle from Beauty and the Beast, I'm like, oh God, this is going to be awful. I don't think you could have given me a description that would have been, yeah, that sounds great, without spoiling it. So I feel like maybe that's why the previews didn't really catch my eye, because I feel like they also didn't really give too much away, enough to at least say, hey, we're not like every other Beauty and the Beast type movie. We're not cliched as hell.
Yeah, I'm not against musicals. I mean, I do enjoy them, but the last musical I think I saw in theaters was La La Land, because there are not that many musicals these days. So that musical was good. It was a good story, but the music and the songs were they were like little accents to the story. And that's usually what I've seen in a lot of musicals. And that's what I was trying to say. In this one, it's not. It actually is conveying to these characters what's going on. And it's part of the story. And it's used so well that it doesn't, even if you're not a fan of musicals, I think you would still enjoy this, because the music is part of the acting. It's part of the story. It's all part of the elements there. It's not an accent. It's fully integrated into it. So yeah, we highly recommend this movie. Do not be fooled if you were like Danny and me and you kind of saw the trailer and you were like, well, okay, maybe if I, have 2 hours to kill. It is definitely a movie worthwhile seeing. And if you have seen it, you probably know what we're talking about. But we do warn you again that it does involve child abuse. You don't really realize that till like the last fourth of the movie. It does involve child abuse. So if you are triggered by that, then you might want to stay clear of it. Although, like I said, it doesn't do it too harshly, but you definitely get the psychological effects, and it could be triggering if you have that history. And if you are currently in a situation with child abuse or know of a situation with child abuse, again, like Suzu did in the story, presence makes all the difference. As we know, the system's not perfect, but if you don't know where to go or how to approach it, you can at least try calling 1-800-4A-CHILD. Again, that's 1-800-422-4453. We also have other resources on the Victims and Villains website on the mental health resources that you can check out, because we want to make that available and want to make sure people feel comfortable reaching out for help. So that will do it for this is episode 3, right? All right, 3 down. There you go. Woo! Next up on episode 4, we will be kind of shifting gears, because I think the last 3 that we did were all kind of pretty powerful and heavy, and not that next one isn't going to have some major themes in it, but it looks like it's a little bit more kind of tongue-in-cheek and a little more action, and but it's Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't know if you two, neither one of you, know anything about it. I'm obviously new to it.
Yeah, so excited.
I think it's our first demon one, if I understand correctly, right?
Oh yeah, and it's
this season.
It's so good. Jujutsu Kaisen. Yeah, it is amazing. I haven't seen the movie. There is a movie that it's kind of a prequel from what I understand, but I've read all the manga. I can't wait to see what they do next with it, but there's only 1 season out so far. It's amazing. It's about this kid who kind of ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's kind of an oddball, but he's really funny, and he makes really dire situations very lighthearted, and it's very much like a slice of life anime, including demons and all that might entail. So basically there's this school, and they train to kill demons and utilize their powers and stuff like that. Good luck figuring out who my favorite character is. So really think about it.
I could already tell you.
You've seen the series as well, Graham?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just gonna be new for me. But I still have to see series. So I'll wait for my guess till next episode here. I'll keep it in mind as I'm watching it.
Can't wait to rewatch it this week. Ugh, so excited.
It's a fun ride. I'm not waiting for some of the heavier moments, but
Oh God, no. Yeah. If you read the manga, there's a specific arc that's real bad, real bad, and there's a lot of chaos that comes down on their heads. But don't worry about it this season. That sounds like a problem for future us.
So season 1 doesn't have too heavy of stuff.
Nah.
Graham's making a face. He's like,
Really?
Compared to the last 3 things we've covered this season.
I mean, it's nothing like Grave of the Fireflies, okay? Like, you're not going to get into anything that crazy.
Is that the bar now that we always said everything to?
That movie, I sobbed for like a good couple hours after. I was like, oh, this is so messed up.
There's a moment in the series I would compare as being like that scene with a dog and a little girl from Full Metal Alchemist.
Not in the first season.
Jujutsu Kaisen?
We need to talk after this.
They're going to rewatch season 1, so they got their story
I know,
straight.
clearly we got to rewatch it.
I'm going to watch season 1, so I know what they're talking about, and we'll reconvene again in 2 weeks to talk Jujutsu Kaisen. So join us then. Until then, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitch at Kittens and Caffeine, on Instagram at Kittens and Caffeine, even though I haven't posted on it in a hot minute. But that's where all my cosplay is. And then on Twitter, try to be funny. It's not going so well. At Danny Ari Cosplay.
You can find me on Twitter. I have 2 Twitter accounts. One is Mad Shellfish, and that's more of kind of me retweeting other people being funny and me trying to be funny and making poignant observations. And the other one is more for kind of the typical nerd stuff. I'll share art from video games. I'll talk about fighting games, stuff like that.
You can follow me on Twitter as well. Twitter's apparently a place to be. You can follow me at my handle at Matthew A. Basil. And Basil spelled just like the spice, but with an E on the end. I'm a writer, so you can keep track of all my projects and everything on there. And I also try to throw in a funny question every now and then, but again, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm with you, Danny. I feel your pain. If you want to join the anime conversation or have an anime movie or series you want us to cover or a question, you can feel free to email us at animindpodcast@gmail.com. Our listeners can also follow our parent company, Victims and Villains, over at victimsandvillains.net. There you can find links to their Facebook, Twitter. They're also on Twitter as well. Like I said, it's a place to be. They're also on Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. So you can see their links there and follow them on social media. Victimsandvillains.net also has movie resources, movie reviews, podcasts, such as the one you're listening to right now. And most importantly, our mental health resource library. As I mentioned, any kind of situation that you're in and you need some support, you need to find your voice. Those at least will hopefully get you started. So until next time, keep both your mental health and anime on the mind.